the TikTok account that you started fairly recently, just earlier this year, right?
Yes, at the start of the
In
year.
January this year. Does that mindset, is it part of the motivation behind starting such a TikTok channel as well?
Not really. So the reason why I started that whole TikTok series, so I haven't been on TikTok until that point. And I did it mainly because there is already an innate desire to improve my Mandarin. Ever since O level. I saw it kind of more as a pause rather than a stop when I took my CLB. Because it was difficult enough trying to get good grades for all of the other subjects really.
Yep.
And when you have something like Chinese where there's obvious reasons why I don't enjoy learning it. The embarrassment where you get called up to class and then you can only say half of the words in your paragraph, and then after that you, no matter how hard you try, you go for tuition and all that, your scores get worse rather than get better. It's like, wow, then English at that point in time still C6, math and all that. Okay, minusing one subject in O levels meant a lot, right? That's 2 hours of your time, and then you don't have the pressures of going to the two attempts, because you get to go to the mother tongue earlier.
2 times. Yeah.
But for me, it's like I'm not going to pass on the first one, so that means I have to go through that like hell twice. So I put a pause on that. But obviously, as per the wisdom of those who are elder than me, as well as some of my peers, it is something that will affect you in terms of how you live your life. Conversations become a little bit less colorful because you have less access to people who may have stories but only have it in Channel 8. Maybe you may go and visit China or speak to other people just out of life serendipities, and they only speak Mandarin. What then? So that happened for the next few years. And during my documentary, naturally, there's going to be some stories that I either couldn't take up or I failed in doing the best I could because I don't have a good command of Mandarin. 2 documentaries in particular are A Sunny Past, which I did in 2019, who Sunny Ng, the main protagonist of the documentary, only speaks Mandarin. He understands English. And we had that weird thing whereby I would ask questions to him in English, and then he'll reply to me in Mandarin. And because at the very least, like my father speaks Chinese, I can listen. 我还可以讲一点点, but it's very basic conversational that the conversation can still happen. But my questions aren't as sharp. They aren't as nuanced because those nuances are left on the floor because I cannot communicate. The teas market was also another one, because the teas market, I'm really going into what Singapore is as a melting pot. I've seen Indians being able to speak fluent Hokkien, and then after that, a Chinese man being able to speak fluent Malay. Like, I finally knew what they meant in terms of Singapore being multiracial. I can't participate in that. I only know English very well, of which that is not really the lingo of that particular land. And then my Mandarin was like subpar. And because of that, I lost a lot of the stories that I could have told within that particular documentary. There's another documentary that I want to do, which involves a friend of mine and her father-in-law. And he can also only speak Mandarin. But after doing A Sunny Past, I don't want to go through that again until I get a better command of my Chinese, because I'm not doing justice to the story of this person, especially because I acknowledge the fact that the documentaries that I do, if it's done well especially, would likely outlive the subjects as well as myself. And so it has to hold that responsibility very well. So that's effectively the reason why I want to relearn my Mandarin. Now, why does it have to be a TikTok documentary series and all that? Effectively, it is because it is not like I've not tried to learn Mandarin, right? Actually, when 2020 came and then there was circuit breaker, one of the first things that I did, apart from trying to play a few games that has been on my computer where I've not played because I've been working, and then circuit breaker is like, finally, I can go and play some games, was I want to pick up my Mandarin again. But I found that very hard because it's not enjoyable. So then the question is, how do I make it fun and enjoyable? The good thing for me is that making a documentary, even though it's hard work, it's fun for me.
Okay.
So then let's combine the two together. Can I make a documentary about my experience doing and learning Chinese? And then in doing so, it pulls me along. And that's kind of like just that simple mindset. Obviously, then there's another one. Does the audience actually care? Because if there's no audience that care, then there's also no point spending all the effort, because it can be both costly in terms of time and money, like renting lights as per what you will. I started to think about what does this series mean from an audience perspective. And the good thing is that almost every conversation that I have always seem to have a tension about who we are and where we come from. And this is not just Singaporeans. One of the last conversations I had before I started the series was by this friend of mine who recently became a father. Now, he's from Spain, works in Singapore. Mother's Singaporean, but is Malay. Daughter's on the way. Going to enter primary school. What language in terms of mother tongue should they pick up? Because naturally you're going to take up English. Mother is Malay. But then after that, Malay is like, they say that you can learn it at home. You might as well take the extra effort and then learn Chinese, because then at least you have 3 languages.
The language of tomorrow lah.
It's not. It's more like, I guess it's more of a pragmatic choice.
Okay.
And it seems that the Malay community has a culture where it's easier to learn within themselves, compared to like Chinese, where for some reason I think it's harder. But I haven't really explored why that was yet. I hope to explore it later on. And then after that, there's also Spanish, which is the father's mother tongue. But Singapore obviously doesn't offer that. But then the grandparents speak Spanish. So then what mother tongue does the kid want to learn? So it became this very interesting concept to me, whereby what is, especially in my generation and future generations, it feels like we are the start. How do we identify ourselves with the language that we use? Because I don't think that people like myself are uncommon. It's not that I don't want to hold 2 languages. It is that it is difficult, and then when you put it in the grand scheme of things, it is the easiest one to let go first. Because at the very least, I know English. I know what I'm losing, but it was a necessary sacrifice. If it was easier to learn Chinese, of course, why not? But then that's the thing. But then other people all over the world also have that. Right? You go to the US, and then after that, you want to learn like English and Spanish, and then now you have so many other both interracial and multinational generation of children. And so then this tension between identity and language becomes very interesting to explore. And it is something that I hope to be able to kind of explore while I'm also regaining my own understanding of my language. What more can I learn about myself? And what more can I learn about other people who are either struggling with their own mother tongue or have learned other mother tongues even though it is not their own? In chapter 3 of the TikTok, my primary 1 to primary 6 books were all borrowed, not borrowed, they were donated to me by someone on Carousel who is Malay. So she's taking the O-level with me as well. Yeah. So she has a better command of Chinese than I do. And that was very interesting. I hope to be able to interview her as I become like better.
So what's the motivation for doing O-levels?
So the good thing is that my neighbor also, who is an Indian family, their kids are actually better at Mandarin than I am. And it's effectively, they are about the same age as me. So at that particular time, the theory, which obviously became true, was that China was going to become the next superpower. You're already in a society where 70% of the population is Chinese. It is more advantageous to you to both learn the language of the majority plus learn the language of the uprising superpower. If China takes over US, then obviously if you can understand the language, you're going to be put in a better standing. That's just the way that it is. But I think that some of them, they also do that because is the 30-minute up? Or?
No, I'm just looking at,
No problem.
make sure that it's in focus.
No problem.
Yeah. So,
what was like the
China rising.
No, I think that they are, and this is still an assumption, I think that they are confident in doing this because I think for the people who come from non-Chinese families but ask their kids to learn Chinese is because they also have somewhat of a confidence that they can retain at least basic conversational
of their mother tongue.
So I don't think it's a mutually exclusive thing. But then I think that's also what the parents think. I do not know what the kids think. And that's something that I hope to explore as I also go through the same struggles. The emotions that I'm currently feeling as I'm taking the test papers or I'm like learning on a daily basis is still very much similar to how I've experienced in secondary school. The only thing that has changed is my age and my life experience. So that has been very interesting to try and like see those same emotions, but from a different, like more matured perspective.
Why TikTok though? I mean, you could put it on YouTube with a different video dimension. You know, why was it TikTok?
So TikTok was because of me thinking, how am I going to shape this in terms of a series? Is it going to be long or is it going to be short? The idea came out that because it feels very much like I'm in my own like anime journey like that. My O level is the final boss. My primary 1 to my sec 3 papers are all of my mini bosses. And it feels like I'm going to go on this journey, I'm going to practice, I'm going to have a training montage, I'm going to meet mentors, I'm going to meet people like on the road and all those who might give me advice, I might stumble and all that. It feels a lot like a manga. And when I thought about that, it's like, okay, then maybe I should do it into chapters. Now, the chapters are going to be short. So immediately, because of that, YouTube was already kind of out of the list already. Because YouTube, for one, it is something that I think the current algorithm prefers something that's a lot more long form. And also, I think it is a lot more difficult now to get that traction on YouTube with this particular kind of series. Maybe in the past, last time they used to experiment with like series and all that now like not so much. Facebook, I've also taken it out completely because Facebook is one of those things whereby you can put something out, it'll go viral, it'll get seen by a lot of people. But you want to see other episodes or other chapters, you can't. It's very difficult to find old content, which is why that was out as well. TikTok, even though I've never used it prior to this year, I knew of its interface being that if you go to the profile page, you can swipe up seamlessly from one chapter to the next. So using that whole manga concept, you see the first chapter finish already, you swipe up, you see chapter 2, you swipe up, you see chapter 3, and then so on and so forth. So it was more of a user experience reason as to why that is the case. Now, why that compared to Instagram? The only ironic reason is the fact that TikTok came first and is known for the fact that they are short form, very high pace platform, and Instagram was inspired by that thing, but they weren't inspired enough to increase their video duration. So Instagram Reels still only has it up to a minute.
60 seconds. Yeah.
But then TikTok, I already knew that my videos were going to be 3 to 5 minutes. Now they're already at 10 minutes in terms of the limits, which I don't need. The 3 to 5 minutes works for us very well. And so those combinations made it such that even though I've never had any experience to a platform, that seems to be the place that it will be.
And that's my problem with IG Reels as well.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of videos that are like 66 seconds, just a little bit over exceeding the Reels limit, right?
Yeah.
And I can't because initially I was trying to like, when I have this dimension, it fits perfectly well on TikTok and on IG Reel. So one of the reasons why I got a bit slacken off my IG postings was because a lot of my postings started to exceed the 60 seconds. I'm surprised by the kind of thought that you put behind for this particular series about you learning Mandarin. The thought that you put behind how the audience would recept to it, because I would imagine, I mean this is like my assumption. I thought that it would be more of a I'm a creative, I want to do this, I do it my way, and I don't really need to think about what the audience. What do you think is the relationship or the balance between us as creative, right? Doing research on the audience in the market and trying to figure out what they want, then we produce something that is what they want, or doing something that we are really, really passionate about, and letting the audience find our work and enjoying our work. Because from what I hear, you do quite a fair bit of thinking about how the audience would react to it, what the audience want. Does this concern you sometimes?
So I think the tensions that creatives always have in terms of where does my work go to, or how does it live on, where does it stay, do I care whether people watch it or not? Those are valid questions. And I feel like there's more than one right answer because it depends on what kind of creator you want to be. There are some people that are hobbyists that create for self-fulfillment. It may be there in the world, but to be honest, if no one sees it, it's fine. So then because of that, then the platform is more towards perhaps either what's most convenient for them or what's most impactful for their work. The audience comes secondary. The audience goes to them. Fair game. There are other people that's like, I need this to be ROI, right? So the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to find where I can get the most audience in the shortest amount of time or with the most minimum amount of effort, and then work hard on that so that then I can get the metrics I need to show that this deserves it. For me, I'm maybe somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, in the sense that I do my works knowing that I can be comfortable that no one will watch it. I still know that it is a good piece of work. So because at the very least I know that I have one audience, and that audience is the people that's involved in the documentary itself. Or because in all the works that I do, there are other people involved. So then I already have an audience regardless of whether I like it or not. And then those people, I need them to vouch that what I've done to them, I've done justice to the efforts, the stories that they put in. So I have that. But then if no one watches it, I also would feel a bit sian, obviously, because it's like, why am I then putting it out into the world? So what I tend to do is that I try to think about how can I maximize my chance of success. So I'm not pandering to the audience in a sense. I'm trying to say, okay, this is the way I want to do it. But after I had that, the next question is how am I going to lower all of the barriers of entry without mitigating the integrity, without affecting the integrity of that first priority. So the first priority, the story has to be done justice to it, has to be there. There's no over dramatization of it for the sake of it getting a bigger bang. So once that is done already, how can I then champion that? And I think that thought process is the thing that helps me make the decisions that I want to make in terms of what the content is and where does the audience, the role plays in it. Yeah.
Coming to your series on TikTok, right? Is this the first time you are as the lead in front of the camera? Because you have always been behind the camera, right?
Yeah, not really. So I already made a conscious decision at the end of 2019 that I will be in front of the camera. Wait, I'm getting my dates wrong. 2019? No, 2020. 2020? 2020. Yes, at the end of 2020, I decided that I wanted to step in front of the camera as well, which was an easy thing for me to do because I'm someone who is talkative. Like, I don't get stage fright. It's just that I can't communicate well. And I spent the entirety of my life, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life improving on this, because I can talk for hours and all that, but I may not be the best at communicating. Not me. I am not the best at communicating, especially when it comes to being concise. So I felt that I've gotten to a stage where I can go back in front of the camera, and as per lady luck in life, I had a few good opportunities, because immediately when I thought about that, I had a phone call where a past client of mine said that they wanted to do a factory tour, but they didn't have the budget for a host. They wanted me to shoot the video initially, but they wanted a host. So I said, why not we do a barter trade? I haven't hosted before, but I can host this because we are already doing the video for you.
Yep.
If you know the risk involved, because this is a client-facing work. Sure. I did it with a couple of friends. It gives me that necessary experience in terms of what I need. The moment that production ended, I got another call. And then the call was from a production company that was doing a series called On the Red Dot. and they called me because they wanted me to host an episode because it is 3 years on from when the Sungai Road Teas Market closed down.
Okay.
And can I be the host of that?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, from just thinking about wanting to be in front of the camera, I was paid to be on one, and I was paid to be on another, and being in front on national television. So after those two already, then finally I did my third one, which is my own YouTube project. And the way that I'm doing my YouTube projects is that it is meant to be more like big events rather than a lot of mini videos coming up. So I did one on why the monkey bars in Singapore, you don't really find them in the playgrounds anymore. And then the second one on whether HDBs in Singapore are skyscrapers. And those two are all like self-funded, independent, learned a lot of all those kind of stuff. And then so now I have a little bit more of those experience. And then obviously when this TikTok idea came about with the Chinese and all that, it's like, yeah, I can be in front of the camera. It's like I have done the work that I need to develop myself to that particular point.
What do you like about being in front of camera?
I don't...
Or initially, what made you want to like take the lead to be in front of the camera? The thought process behind?
I think that's just more advantageous. So it is easier for me to perhaps secure jobs or to get my name out there if you can see the face. And it is an advantage that I know doesn't come naturally for a lot of people, which works to my favor. There are other people that say that, oh, I know the advantages of being in front of camera for people to put your craft and your face one and the same. But I can't because I either feel very uncomfortable on camera even though I know how to operate that thing very well. I don't have that problem. So there are times whereby it's like, because I don't have that fear, that should be even more of a nudge for me to be in front, because there are other people who want it that cannot.
Yeah. So it's part of a personal branding process, thought process?
Personal branding, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
There is also the other thing whereby I've also met other documentary subjects who would really love to tell their stories, would never want to appear in front of camera. And I may not know how to do it in other ways. Like for Asani Pass, we did the interview whereby it was without cameras. Because the moment you have the cameras on, at least the time when I had with him and my limited experience, you couldn't eke out the most natural. He wasn't his natural self. Very stiff, very gao wei. It's very hard to make him feel comfortable. I didn't have that skill set yet in order to do that. I wished I could speak on his behalf as well. And so I felt like by being in front of the camera, apart from just a personal branding thing, it also helped to develop another aspect of my documentary storytelling, such that I can be a proxy for my subjects, which is, tried and true in the documentary space. There are documentary hosts as well, where it needs to. So I felt it was a relevant skill set that I wanted to learn for that aspect.
You know, one of the things you mentioned earlier about how our work essentially will outlive the subject and outlive us, right? It's something that I think a lot about as well. So one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about doing podcasts, interviews, and video podcasts particularly, right, is that, my dad passed away 12 years ago because of a heart attack. So at that time, I had breakfast with him. Then I just finished my NS that time. Then I flew off to Bangkok for holiday. Then the next day when I was at Bangkok, my mom told me, hey, you have to come back. Your dad had a stroke. So I came back, then he had really passed away. And 12 years on, right, I realized that I remember very little of his voice. I don't know his voice now. Because it was not documented. And also because 12, 13 years ago, smartphone and the video quality, and it's just not as advanced as it is now. So what happens is when I want to sort of remember my dad, right? My dad he's a devotee at one of the temples. So it's like 4 generation kind of, the whole family goes to that temple. So they will have this kind of procession every year last time before the pandemic, right? And they will engage a videographer. And I will go on YouTube, go to the temple's channel and look through some of the old videos. And in some of the scenes, right, I'll be like, hey, that's my dad walking past, And I think about a video podcast, right, an interview, as something that I would like to make it more for the mass people. traditionally, Chinese we call it a 专访.
You need to educate me on that.
So 访问 is like an interview.
Yes, 访问, okay.
专访 is like a in-depth interview. Like 专门 is like especially.
Yes. Yeah.
So 专访 essentially means 我专门来访问你. So I want to 专门来访问你, right, to know about your life stories. And it's out of reach of the mass because you typically only have a 专访 opportunity on the mainstream media. So you will go on shows like Charlie Rose, whereby, you sit down with Lee Kuan Yew and you want to have like 1 hour chat with Lee Kuan Yew, or you want to have a 1 hour chat with Obama, or even like the boss of Sheng Siong, Lim Hock Chi, you want to have a 1 hour chat with him about his entrepreneurial journey, about his philosophy and all. But who wants to have a 1 hour chat with my father during that time? Nobody would, right? So after he has passed away, and I realized that, it's a bit of a pity. I still remember him. But how do I communicate who my father is to my son in future or to my daughter in the future? How do I communicate to them, this is who your grandfather is? Because they have never met, never seen, and there are not a lot of photos because my father don't really like to take photos. It's very difficult, right? So comes into a video podcast whereby it becomes to me, every guest that I interview, like you talk about audience, right? We have at least one audience. Like I know that every person I interview, right, will have at least one audience as well. Because at least the wife would watch, at least the father would watch, at least the mother would watch. So coming to you, right, this thing about doing justice that you have, even now that we have talked, you have mentioned a few times, and even in your like when you write article for Channel News Asia, you also write about this term justice comes up, right? What is this philosophy behind doing justice to your work? What does it mean?
No, I think it means that, firstly, I think it's inherent in that statement that you do the best that you can with the resources that you have in that time of life that you were in for the opportunity that was presented to you, which is that story. And then when other people see it, they need to feel that earnesty in your effort. So you do your best to capture the story as honestly as possible. But not just that, right? Because if you want to do something that's honest, there are many ways to do it. But there's a reason why there are some documentaries or some forms of media that do better than others. Because they are more engaging. And that attention to creativity and a little bit of that risk-taking is part and parcel in one's attempt to make that content not just honest, but engaging as well. So the reason why I use like doing justice to stories though is because I feel it's multifaceted. Not only do you need to be honest to the subjects itself, but let's say I'm doing a story that didn't get that necessary attention that it requires. Right, a few years ago, climate change and the environment was still a relatively niche thing. And so a lot of people had to do justice to it. Not to tell it honestly, but to also make it such that naysayers or people on the fence can be engaged by it and potentially convinced by it. And so there are many different kinds of descriptors, action descriptors, and I use action descriptors because I don't know what's the actual description for it. But effectively, there are many ways that people can interpret it depending on the context. And so I never say it's like, let's do be honest to the work itself or make it so that as many people can watch it. I think all of them are inherent in this particular statement that I've created for myself. That's kind of the motto of the work that I'm trying to do.
It's a bit intangible, right, sometimes. So how do you gauge it? Do you, after you wrap it up and it's launched, how do you reflect upon it, whether you have done justice to it? The earnesty that people, the audience can feel can be very intangible as well.
So it helps the fact, maybe for me it's because I think I am given a rather high level of self-awareness, which I use it to my advantage a lot. I like the fact that it is difficult for me to lie to myself. And for every documentary work that I've done, there's always a particular point in the post-production process when I know it's done. Now, can we do better? Of course. If we had more money, if I had more experience, if we had more talent on board, sure. But there's a particular point in time in the post-production, nearly before it's wrapped, whereby it's like, it's done already. Now, I can have no control in terms of how the audience reacts. But my current life experience has shown me that when you put your all into your work, people can feel it. The earnesty, this wasn't from a description that I had. It's someone else described my work like that, and then I borrowed that for subsequent narrations of what this feeling is.
How important is commercial success to you?
Well, it is definitely fundamental to it. I'm not doing this as a hobby. The reason why I do this as a profession is because I have a life philosophy that if you are so lucky enough in life to find something that you're innately good at, that you just find it easier to work hard compared to other people, and then you work hard on that, you are going to get to a relatively happy spot in life. And for me, when I was pushed to ask that question, what am I innately good at? And the very first attempt that I did was documentary, and it seemed to work out quite well. That became now my life, the testing of a hypothesis that I'm going to go through throughout my life, which is using what I'm innately good at, can I find success in it? I liken this to the way, like, let's say, there probably would have been athletes that worked as hard as Roger Federer or Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yep.
Right? But the talent, the innate talent that people have is such a strong multiplier that I don't think it is wise to ignore it. Now, there are other people that obviously have other theories. Some people feel like all talent can be developed. I personally am not at the camp of that. I feel like everyone has at least one innate talent, and then when you work hard on that, the multiplier effect just kicks in. Person A and person B both put 100 points in their effort, but person A just has a little bit of that finesse, a little bit of that innate feel on rhythm and all that. So when he learns piano, of course, he's going to get better at it because it just comes so naturally to them. Not to say that hard work, not to discount the fact that hard work was put in. Hard work was put in. It's just that it has that plus that talent. So for me, I feel like I have gone through that phase of determining whether documentary is that for me. And it's always a belief because there's no metric that tell you, you're talented in this, sign here. Right? I believe that I'm talented in documentary storytelling, and then now I'm working hard on it so that then I can make a living for myself for it. Because my true purpose of being on this earth is just to simply replicate the comforts that my parents have created for me and my siblings. So I have one brother and two younger sisters. And I've told this story many times before, so I hope to be more concise in this one, is the fact that in Singapore, it seems that you may be lucky enough to have a family that has the necessary fortunes to ensure that you don't need to worry about the food in your fridge, roof over your head, and all those kind of things. Or you may be lucky enough to have a family that has time for you, to follow you along your journeys, the first time you ride a bike, the first time you swim, so on and so forth. And most families have neither because they're busy trying to make ends meet. And then the ends meet are really, you have to be very prudent. I was fortunate enough to be born into one of these households where I both don't need to worry about money, not in terms of the luxurious sense, but in terms of the everyday comfort sense. Yet at the same time, my parents were there, being part of the family. And so the logical question for me is that why can't my wife and future kids enjoy the same thing? Because I already have such a big jump start. Other people have to start from the bottom, and I know that some of them, through great hard work and talent, are going to be more successful than I. What excuse do I have in not being able to, at the very minimum, replicate the success that my parents had for my family? Now, obviously, one of the key things is that it is harder to make money now compared to in the boom heydays in Singapore. Like now, you're talking about like inflation, double income also may not be enough, and those kind of things. Fair points, but the fact still remains is that I already started my life with a very good roll of the dice, and there are people who are worse off than me, who are going to be more successful than me, and kudos to them. It's just that when I see them, and then I don't at least try and match, if I don't at least try to match them, then I feel like I'm not using the most of what has been, what I've been blessed with.
Is it stressful for you then to have this goal in mind and to choose your pick of a career and business?
Not really.
Financially, what's the commercial business of a documentary filmmaker, like for people who might aspire as well to become someone like you?
So the good thing, I mean, you're asking this at a time whereby it is very relevant. I knew that this ambition of mine, while simple, was going to be difficult as well. So the only answer was to give myself as much of a runway as possible, which is why I took that first leap of faith in 2013. So it's been 9 years since I've been on this documentary journey. I've given myself only 10 years to make this dream a reality. If not, we can make things a little bit more pragmatic. But within these 10 years, let me try and do it my way. It's year 9 now. Next year is the year 10. And the reason why it's not arbitrary, like 10 year and it's like 10 year anniversary. Next year, I'm already married. And next year is when our HDB comes up and we're planning to start a family soon after. Perspective changes once you have an actual family. You're not going to be able to take, at least for me, the same risk that I might be taking now in terms of the time, in terms of the effort. Because once again, I did all these since 2013 because I not just want to earn money, but also to spend time. It's going to be very weird that after I do all this already, I'm not there when I see like my child take like the first steps because I'm out busy trying to make my next documentary work for the family. That wasn't the reason why I slogged it out for so long. Now, how does all of this work? To be honest, I can't give you a concrete answer because that has been the thing that has been in constant flux. The good thing is that I am making money. The tricky thing is that I'm still in the process of figuring out how to make the money, but in a way whereby I still have the time. The most interesting thing that even though it's stressful, it's also exciting to think about and experiment is that because I came into this profession not because I'm an artist, and I'm also someone who is relatively outside of the industry. Never really met anyone who is like the who's who of like MediaCorp and all those kind of things. That I still genuinely feel that I can succeed in my own ways and in my own terms. And maybe this is just because of the way that I've been raised. Like my father is a businessman, and I've always seen many examples, both in real life as well as in documentaries, that life is not a finite multiple choice. There are multiple choices that people have said that, okay, some people have done A, some people have done B, some people have done C. But there's always an option for you to just put others and then write that in.
So life is not a finite multiple choice. Okay.
Right.
So it's an infinite multiple choice.
Yes. I mean, it's infinite because, I mean, if you really wanted to keep it simple, maybe you have your A, B, C, D, but E is always others. If you feel like all the answers above don't fit you, you can write in the last one. obviously you have to own it as well, because that is also the most unknown. And it requires a little bit of awareness. It requires you to confront perhaps even your own ego as well. Because when you start to then maybe talk to other people, you're going to get confronted with conversations whereby, wait, but I chose A and he chose B. What makes you say that A, B, C, D is worthless to you and you want to add in your own answer? But then the good thing is that because all of us has our own circumstances and our own context, and what's even better, and I'm fortunate enough to, through my documentaries and through my learnings, learn all these kind of perhaps life perspectives early on, is that, as I say, that life is not a finite multiple choice. Nobody ever said that there's only one right answer. Right? In Singapore, I think we've been conditioned to that, whereby, okay, these are the things, you choose what's right for you, and it's always it depends. And if there's multiple right answers, like it can be this or it can be this, then the best answer is the right answer. When you put a lot of like undue stress on yourself, like can't you choose the right answer, and then like that's it already, you can be at peace with it. You don't have to put that stress on yourself, whereby, or just because you choose your right answer, and then you could have gone to the other answer which is also right but maybe slightly better depending on like certain like nuances and all that, then suddenly you rob yourself of the joy that what was the right answer suddenly became something. It's like, no, that was the wrong answer. Then it's like, why is it a wrong answer? Because it's not the best one. And then you just rob yourself of the benefits of choosing what's effectively right. So I think because of that perspective that I have, I am quite excited about what I'm filling up in that others box. Because at least for me, because I'm like doing documentaries and all that, I've not heard of local documentary filmmakers who have made this into a living. But I've also never felt like you needed idols or people who came before you to set the standard. So that never really bothered me that someone has not done it before. In fact, it motivates me because I do enjoy trying to be the first in something, because there's going to be other people that will obviously come up from the future and all that who are going to be better than you, but there's nobody that can take away from you being the first. And I've always enjoyed like that, being like, if we treat life as a game, as like that's the side quest. This is the first person that done it. He may not be the fastest, he may not be the smartest, but he is the first. You cannot take that away. Yeah, that's absolute. Everything else is secondary.
So the underlying belief is also that you can carve your own life destiny. It's in your hands.
Isn't that okay? Yeah, I want to say, isn't that for everyone? But then obviously we do this. We also have to take it back a bit to acknowledge a few things. The first time I invested most of my life savings into the company, to buy my first camera, to buy my first computer, I've never seen my bank account so low. And then I went to Harbourfront. There's a kopitiam at the basement next to McDonald's. And then I saw like the prices over there, and then I think I shed a tear, and then I just lost all my appetite, because I've never seen my bank account so low ever since secondary school. Now, that in and of itself, the reason I think why I reacted that way emotionally was not because I suddenly saw that I've that 3-digit amount of money left in my account, was that I immediately thought, what if I didn't have the family that I have? Because that business could have failed. All my life savings could have gone, but I wouldn't have died. Right? My parents would still be there for me. I'll still have food on the table. Other people don't have that luxury. And then a few years now, I think 2 weekends ago, and it was really very recent. 2 weekends ago, I just spent the most amount of money on a single project. And I was gung-ho about it because this is my 9th year. It's go big or literally go home already. I'll change like the way I do my business. It's going to be a lot more pragmatic, but I'll still be able to make ends meet in a comfortable way. But maybe not as a documentary storyteller anymore. I don't know. Maybe we can do this interview in 1 or 2 years' time. And surprisingly, we just so happened to go back to the same Harbourfront, Harbourfront Kopitiam to eat. And without revealing the actual numbers, I've spent 5 times as much on that project than that whole life-saving situation that I had all those years ago, which is I think around like maybe 2015, 2016-ish. But yet for this one, I can finally now like still choose the food that I want. And we end up just eating at one of the like the Korean stores that they had. Pretty nice beef soup. What I'm trying to get at is I think every time when I take a leap of faith, I'm always reminded that being able to do that without the fear that failure would lead to my death is a privilege that has to be acknowledged. Not out of like, or making it public and whatever. At the very least, I think it's just a reality check. Because there's people that I've never met who may have done similar leaps and may have pursued further than me because it is really do or die. If don't have this, that means it is no food, baby food for the baby, or the rent may not be paid. And then there are other people who like they are doing this, the amount of money is like it's like a joke to them, and it's okay. So yeah lah. Every time when I take these leaps of faith, I just automatically, I don't know why, just have like that reality check whereby what does this money mean in the grand scheme of things, and not just in the context of myself, but what if I didn't have that luxury of having the great parents that I have, of having the great support system of a supportive wife and like understanding siblings.
What's your risk appetite like? You would say?
Adverse.
So would you, like the film that you just put in this amount of money, and considering that you consider yourself adverse, right? Is this the maximum you'll go? If let's say you just need that little bit more to make it better, and you know that you need the money, are you someone who would take up a bank loan, personal bank loan, or look for investors, or look for friends, family to borrow, or sell something, you know?
So let me answer that last one and then work back. For me, in terms of taking risk, when it comes to money, and I think I've been shaped a lot by Jack Neal's Money Not Enough, I only place bets with money that I have. So if it's money that I don't have, I don't bet on it. So that's just a principle. The next one is that I see that trying to jump off a 10-story building is the same as jumping off a plane. The negative end result for both is marginally different. You're gonna have a bad time if it's negative. So if you're already planning to jump off at 10 stories, you might as well jump off from a plane and then have a better story to tell.
And enjoy the scene along the way.
Enjoy the scene along the way. So that's the way at least I view the kind of like risk that up to a certain point, you might as well just go higher. It's going to look a lot more risky to a lot of other people. But in all honesty, past a certain gap, all those other things, the negative results are the same. So you might as well increase the potential ROI of that.
But for you, the higher is like what you mentioned earlier, the money that you have, you will bet.
Yeah.
So you're willing to show hand all your money, but you will not go beyond that.
Yeah. So like I naturally like this is the amount of money that I have. I can hire a plane for that to jump off. I can't hire a rocket ship. I'm not going to like borrow money from friends, from banks to like, can I do this rocket ship or not? Because then when you fail at that, you are bringing other people involved. Now and then that's a risk that I'm not willing to take. If it's all within myself, then these are personal risks. So then you have that. Now, why then, being a risk-averse person, do I still want to jump off planes and buildings, metaphorically? I think it's because I see the alternative being riskier. I go through the whole risk averse thing because I just overthink a lot. So I like to strategize, and it is both my strength and my weakness. In the past, it leads to a lot of overthinking. Right now, when it's honed well, it becomes analytical, where even though it is risky, once you dive deep into it, it actually makes sense. It is still risky, but it makes sense. So like that's fine. And why am I being so gung-ho in my latest documentary, which is about the feeling of music playing, is that I know that I need something like this in order to get to where I want to be. And I know that next year, being the 10th year of my journey, I need to have that honest conversation with myself and my wife. And I know what decision I'll be making after that. It is going to be family first. So working backwards on that, this is my first and last big investment if it doesn't work out. And then if it doesn't work out, then sure, at least I've shown to myself that I've done my best, that even if I fail, I'll say that I leave with no regrets. But if it works out, then I can get to do this again. And it seems to be something that I always have to be confronted with, be it my first documentary, my second, my third, all of the major documentaries that I've done always have that similar tone. We have to do this now, because the risk of not doing it is, from my perspective, higher. And even if I fail at it, I think I can be comforted by the fact that I've given it my all, so I can leave without regrets. And the residual effects of that, even though it may not be living the dream anymore, would not be any worse off. It's not like after I suddenly do all this, I sell all my camera away and then I go back to like corporate life or those kind of things. I'm still going to be doing something, just maybe not so grandiose.
So the risk is regret. The alternative risk is regret.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, then the risk that you are taking is living a life with regrets.
So the regret is more on doing your best.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you do your best and you fail, there's a very different feeling from when you fail and you know that you haven't left all stones unturned. That there's maybe an option that you haven't explored. All the documentaries I've done, be it those that I deem as successful or failure, all of them, when I look back, I was like, yeah, there's things that we could have done better. But those are in hindsight. Like at that particular moment, that's the best we could do. That's the most we could afford. Cannot already.
Yeah.
And that helps with whatever the results will be. I think it will eat me up a lot if it fails. And then after that, someone say, oh yeah, it fails because you didn't do this. And then you knew that you could do this, but you just decided not to because it was lazy or inconvenient or it was a little bit too expensive. Those kind of things.
And the 10 years checkpoint, the going back to a more commercial kind of thing would be just giving up on documentary and doing more like conventional client work, commercial stuff.
So that part usually I don't give as much thought about, because okay, so the 10 years checkpoint is that I've always given myself checkpoints. I've given myself checkpoints 6 months into the journey. So, okay, if I roll back everything to when this first started, this entire journey started on 2013, April 25th. That's when my first blog post about documentary came up. And it was during the time when I'm still waiting to go on reservist. So the first checkpoint was reservist. Do I still want to do this, or do I want to just forgo it and then just enjoy my BMT? I decided that while I'm doing BMT, I'll still use some time to read up, maybe write some articles on my phone, those kind of things. So we have that. The next checkpoint that came in was after BMT. Because after BMT, you get to decide, get to influence where you want to go, officer, sergeant, and all that. By that point, I kind of have a little bit more conviction. Like, there might be something here. That I decided that I really wanted to not be an officer or not to be a sergeant. I'll be the best man that I can be. And I can prove it because I got the best, the best man in the batch in my life in military police. And then inside there, I have 2 years to show myself whether I had what it takes to then bring this over to university. Now, these checkpoints are all there because there's always opportunity cost. Like, I think that I would have enjoyed my time potentially in being in Sergeant or OCS, and to be honest, the pay difference between OCS and men very different.
Yeah, 2.5 times difference.
Right? So
yeah,
there's an
2 times
opportunity
different,
cost. But I felt like given the cards that I had, it's like, okay, it's worthwhile. And then the next biggest one was in university, if you want to do what I was planning to do, that means that you are not going to go for the case competitions. You're not going to go for the potential exchanges that you may want to go to live that full uni life. You're going to do that uni life and you're going to do this business. And that is also a big that big checkpoint. Which path do I want to take? Because the moment I decide on one, okay, then that means this is now my new lens. Do you want me to pause first?
No, I can't be helped. It's okay.
Yeah. So then, because once I start on that, then it's like, okay, already. You chose this path. Now we are going. You cannot like half-ass here and there.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit more greedy in a university by way of, because I also came from Polytechnic, and the first things that I do when I go into a new system is that I learn about the rules and then I treat it like a game. So I knew during orientation already that for Polytechnic students, you already have, if you do the honors track, you have one semester already taken out. Already, like, you've learned the knowledge there. And there are those unelected modules, but if you get selected for an exclusive business leadership development program within the NUS Business School, all of those will be covered for you, which is great, because for me, the last thing I want to do is to think about the possibilities of what uni could offer me. Because I'm an overthinker. You give me options and opportunities, I'm going to start doing a lot of different configurations. And then they say, oh yeah, if you're a poly student and then you have this business leadership development, and then I'm also from Tembusu College, all of these other chapalang things, all settled. And it's not just settled, it's settled to the creme de la creme experience, which is fantastic, because that means that even though for the 3 years that I was in NUS, I still had the chance to go to India, go to Beijing, go to Canada for exchange, all while satisfying all my graduation requirements. So now then the next one was, at the end of my uni life, I had to make a choice between, do I want to continue honors or do I want to drop it and immediately continue doing my documentary? So that checkpoint was easy, simply because one of the priorities that I had when I was in army was to develop my capacity up to a point whereby I can entertain my documentary journey with my capabilities of being a good team player within the modules that I'm taking.
What's this capacity?
Because it's like, if you're starting a business, you're trying out new stuff and all that. If you don't have the fuel tank and that capacity to
the emotional
also,
kind of bandwidth,
emotional bandwidth,
physical bandwidth,
or just like mental bandwidth to be a relevant and viable team player for your teammates who depend on the collective in order to score that A, to increase that GPA, right? It's going to be very selfish. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a dead weight because I'm like living my dream. It's like, screw that. I'm not sure whether you can say F words on your.
Can.
but either way, it's like, fuck that lah.
Yeah.
So with that capacity was reached at the end of my year 3, because the year 3,000 modules was very heavy, and at the same time, I was doing my second documentary, the Singapore Teas Market documentary Trespass. And so at that, I had to make the decision whereby I don't think I can do this while also doing final year project. Let me drop it. I already have like the basic degree. And to be honest, if you already know what you want to do in life, the honors doesn't really help as much in terms of like career prospects. I know what I want to do after that already. So now once we have this, then the next checkpoint is coming a lot later, because this was around the 2018, 2019 mark. The next checkpoint is basically next year when the HDB comes. And then because of the context that will be developed, the fact that now I have to pay HDB rental, the fact that now the savings need to be a lot more robust and the income streams need to be a lot more consistent.
Renovation.
Yeah, the renovation is actually like all settled. Like those one big time purchases. The fact is, if you're running a business, to be honest, big purchases, one-time purchases aren't as impactful. the thing that at least scares me the most is consistency.
The overhead lah.
No, it's like consistency, because your baby is going to ask for milk.
Yep.
Regardless of whether you're getting paid or not.
Yep.
HDB and all those loans, you're gonna get paid regardless of whether you have income or not. So then cash flow becomes the key.
Yep.
And cash flow for now is the thing that I would be the most worried about, and that's the biggest thing on my mind. And that's the reason why I'm doing something as big as I'm doing now. And then hopefully if it all works out, then it will answer the questions that I have.
When I was in poly, right? So earlier mentioning about the liberty of dropping one subject. I went through that as well because I was very bad in math. And I decided to drop A-Maths because I just can't. During my Sec 3 paper, right, I scored 7 out of 100.
Wow, 7? Oh.
Yeah, 7 points out of 100 points. Because I flipped through the entire A-Maths paper, I could only answer one question. And A-Maths is sort of like, there's no in-between one. It's either you get it, the final answer, or you don't. So I dropped A-Maths and I decided from very early on that I would do a diploma in mass comm in Ngee Ann Poly. And in the School of Film and Media Studies in Ngee Ann Poly, right, there were basically 2 courses during my time. One was mass communication, another was FSV, which is film, sound, video. And it was there, in the School of Film and Media Studies, right, we had a lot of interactions with the kids from FSV. And I saw a lot of all these aspiring filmmakers and people who are very passionate about production. Because in mass comm, right, you had a spectrum of people who were maybe interested in marketing and advertising and all. But when you're in FSV, right, your dream is to become like a filmmaker.
Yep.
Or to go into production at least. And that's why I'm very interested to explore these topics of the business part aspect of filmmaking with you. Because I can still remember going back to those days whereby there were friends who were just, their dream is to do what you're doing now, to produce and to, how do you sell a documentary?
Well, if I knew, then I think I would have reached the other level already. That's currently the existential question.
Okay, well maybe we can talk about this upcoming one that you're working on now.
Yeah. So this particular one is interesting because I've seen the various options that a traditional production would have at its disposal, and none of them really fit the criteria, whereby usually when a project like this comes to life, it first lives on a piece of paper, and then after that it would get grants. And only if it gets grants, it would then have a chance to live. If it doesn't get grants, burn it, put it on a shelf, it doesn't exist.
Do you get a grant for this?
So we had thought about getting grants, but you can't just rely on it. So I already knew that I was in a position to also self-fund this if push comes to shove. What happened was that the timeline started to not make sense because usually there are opening windows in terms of funding, but the windows in terms of our funding being considered didn't match up with when I can shoot the documentary, because mine is not a narrative. So these are like people's lives and all that. And during Labor Day weekend, that was, from my perspective, the last weekend that I could shoot this production. If I miss that, we may be able to shoot it, but we do not know what's coming up. Is Singapore going to be locked down again? Is this person going to have another job? Because these people, they're not actors, right? Everyone needs to burn their weekend or whatever coming together, but if they have jobs and they cannot take leave, I can't make this happen for this particular project. But for that weekend, I can. So I was like, mai tu liao, let's just do this. I think I also wanted to do this because I wanted to see whether I could create my own right answer. Because there's no better way to show your conviction about the work that you do than to literally put your money where your mouth is. This entire thing is fully self-funded for now. And it is also self-funded whereby the crew is being paid properly. They are not being asked for this is a passion project, can you pay that? Because the producer that I'm working with, Shen Kai, we've met a few months before the production became like even a thing. And I've already told him, and we are both in agreement that regardless of where the money comes from, we're doing this right. Everything that everyone has ever bitched about in terms of the nightmares of the film industry, of catering not being to a standard of it being like humane, or not humane lah. I think that's a strong word, but human. Like, be a person. What would you expect out of this? And if it costs another $2 more, pay that $2 more. And so we went in that with that in mind. And I think from the onset experience, it was very positive. And I'm now even more motivated to do the film because now, like, from just my own vision and trying to do justice to my subjects, of which there are 5 of them, I suddenly have like another 20 people working with us over those 3 days. And they also hope that the film succeeds. And then so like I'm motivated by that. And I see the film succeeding only if, one, we have done justice to it by way of like all the editing, animation, sweet, nice really. But also that second part, which is important, where does it live after that, and how is that going to be financed? The way that I'm thinking about it now is that there are effectively 2 routes that I'm exploring. The very first route is that there is a very valuable piece of real estate at the start of the film, which is the in-association rights. Now, I may be speaking out of my ass because I'm not sure whether this is part of tradition or whatever, but I feel like it can be worth arguing that trying to sell association rights to the film, if like a big conglomerate or brand sees and says, I want our brand to be associated with this film, buying the space whereby it is an OKJ works, this film is in association with yada yada yada. You pay for that.
And for them, the risk is actually very low because the final project is already out.
Yeah, the final project is already out. You get to see the thing. If you like it, then after you pay for that. Then after it's almost like you are sponsoring, like you have all these kind of things, or HSBC Skywalk, those kind of is the name in front. So you have that. Then the second one is that maybe we can also treat this as potentially as an art piece as well.
Okay.
Whereby someone, either a private individual or an entity, sees value in this and purchases it like you would a painting. And currently, these are the 2 paths that I am thinking about exploring. Because I ran the numbers and it doesn't make sense for the normal, conventional pockets of money to fund this in a way that might make sense. It might have made sense if they have funded this from the start. But that number has now drastically changed when I self-funded this, because there's no way I'm going to ask for the same amount of money because I've taken all the risk. And not only that, if we succeed, there's now value in that product. So my pitch to the people who I am hoping to show the film to is that they are not just buying the film or buying the association to the film. They are buying in the prospects of me and the people I'm associated with to do this again. Because if this thing doesn't get financed, we can't do this again. It's not sustainable. But I'm always comforted by one of the first lessons that I had in Polytechnic. It's someone by Dr. Ngee. And apparently Dr. Ngee, I think his full name is... Okay, no, Dr. Ngee is fine. Don't butcher his full name. He does guest lectures from time to time. And he decided to guest lecture when I went to Nanyang Polytechnic as part of direct poly admission. So it was one of the first lessons I came. And one thing that always stuck with me was the fact that if money is a problem, it is not a problem. And I think this is especially so for Singapore. There's enough money that's circulating around. My job is now to attract the right people to see this as an investment perhaps for the good of us all rather than to seek an ROI. Because this is not like a Steven Spielberg film. You're not going to like buy in ticket sales. You're not going to do that. But my hope is that my collection of works, that's why it's called OKJ Works, has the pedigree, has the earnestness for people to then say that we need this to continue on. For everyone that's involved, it is a benefit. I've already seen that joy in the crew that I've worked with. Now I just need to ensure that the people who have money in their pockets, where the big numbers that are big to us is not as big to them in the grand scheme of things, we can work something out, and then that would be a new right answer.
Which is something that it's like you mentioned, not conventional. It's not something that people do.
Yeah, but I mean,
people don't explore this way.
I've already started this on an unconventional note, so I guess why stop here?
So things like going on film festivals and all, do you all get paid when the film festival screen your film or?
So that one depends, because apart from my first film, which did surprisingly well as my first film, in film festivals in a limited capacity. I've never been on film festivals since. And then obviously with COVID, the film festival changes a lot. So we do not know what's the state of film festivals now and what they actually mean. Would they go back to pre-COVID? Maybe. They may also take another form. But what I think is that the film festivals are more there in terms of getting you connected with the right people who may then buy your films and all these kind of things. So it's more like a networking and also personal branding kind of stage rather than you making money there. You're there to increase your prospects of them making this into a career.
So 10 years into this career, right, how have you seen the industry evolve? Because nowadays there are many people who call themselves content creator, right? Even I call myself a content creator. And of course, we are working on very different kind of platforms, different kind of nature of work, budget, and medium. Have you seen the industry evolve in your 10 years?
I'm not sure whether I'm the best person to answer that question, because I'm not technically from the industry.
You are like a boutique kind of.
No, because it's I do it in because I do it my way like that. So that's the thing. I would say that.
Maybe I put it this way. Sorry to interrupt you, but would you see yourself thinking about the two options that you mentioned about 10 years ago? Say 10 years ago.
I think it would have been part of my self-deliberation, but it wouldn't have naturally been the obvious choice. Because it's the thing is that maybe you get a Netflix deal and those kind of things. So you would think about being that production company that can be commissioned to do documentary series for the powers that be, depending on the media landscape. So that has been, in terms of the more obvious, even though they are high ambition, are the obvious places that you want to go to win awards, go on to Netflix, Disney Plus, yada yada yada. Why am I thinking about the two paths that I've suggested now? Is because even though they are unconventional, it also makes the most sense for me for this particular project. Now, obviously, if we are talking about the fact that I've made a series and all that, then that conversation might change. But a lot of the things that I think I'm saying is rooted in the context of what it is related to. So then those have to be taken into account.
So what is this film about?
So the feeling of music playing is about what the title suggests. Do you play music?
I tried to, but I'm horrible at it and I gave up to try and be even remotely good at it.
So for me, I can't play music as well.
Yeah.
But I have friends who play music, which are in our society is quite synonymous. We all have at least one friend who has that music touch.
Yep.
The interesting thing is that when talking about music, it almost always gets to the point whereby they'll just resign and say that, it's a feeling that I have. I don't know how to tell you. And obviously, this isn't just exclusive to musicians. Almost anyone who is passionate about their craft or has worked hard to refine their craft will get to a point when talking to someone who is from the outside, I don't know how to explain it. It's a feeling, it's a kanche. Now then, this presents a very interesting challenge for me, because I've always advocated that documentaries can do justice to stories. And I know for a fact that some stories can't be done justice to simply just by words or by pictures. And I have a challenge right here in front of me where I don't know the words to say. I obviously can't show you a picture. There are many videos on music that if I show you, and then for someone who is a non-musician like me, I was like, I catch no ball. So can I now put my money where my mouth is and like, let me do this? Because if I can succeed in this, then I clearly know a little bit about what I'm talking about. So then that became the interesting premise. The second one was just the opportunity of what the story presented. All documentaries have their own set of challenges, but also they have their unique set of potential because of the subject matter, because of the place and all, so on and so forth. In this particular documentary, it is set in one of the most beautiful places in Singapore that you may have never heard of. Is the Innate Chinese Cultural Shop. You are basically in a living museum where there are furnitures that may be well over 100 years old. People talking about, oh, my grandfather used to come from China and all that. The trunk that the grandfather came from China with is still at the shop. We've touched it, we've opened it. Like, that's the level of authentic heritage that you don't just see out in glass. You can touch it, you can feel it. See the jiaben, see the sewing machine that still has the receipt from way when Singapore was still a British colony. So we have that. We have Jeffrey, the owner of the shop, who is very eloquent, both in Teochew, Chinese, and English, and comfortable in front of the camera. And because this is a documentary about music, the musicians that are brought in are also comfortable on camera. And now I have an opportunity to do a documentary in a way that I've wanted to try, but it's very hard to get the elements right, which is that this particular documentary kind of blurs the line between the narratives and a documentary, because everything that you will see in the film is fundamentally documentary, because I've observed them doing this for the past year. The conversations that they have, I even put in certain scenes in the storyboard based on things that I've eavesdropped or I've seen, but I've never told them about. And so when I told them, it's like, okay, now I need to do this. Then it's like, hey, how you know I did this? Because I've been observing. But it isn't captured in the moment. I'm capturing something that I've observed over the past year or more. And then the good thing is that after that, there are certain scenes that I cannot script. In this particular thing, we are putting 4 musicians together and they will jam. There's someone playing the guzheng, there's someone playing the dizi, which is a Chinese flute, there's someone playing the pipa, and there's someone playing the tabla, which is like Indian drums. They have never played, all 4 of them have never played together before, prior to the filming of this. They have never rehearsed. Some of them have never met for the first time. But they have been casted by my producer, whereby by feeding, by character, who knows them, is like, yeah, these can. And what we tried to do is that we wanted to capture lightning in the bottle. Can we capture on film the moments when the click happens? That musicians can somehow communicate with each other through the music, finding the right answer. And then after that, once we've captured it, which I think we have, how can I then communicate that in the documentary so that people who don't play music, people like myself, can understand what's going on? So then there's the unique thing whereby of almost all of my crew has a musical background. My director of photography was, maybe he doesn't play music now, but he was in a band last time. My producer is a cellist. Even like my behind the scenes photographer is someone who is very active in the music scene. He may not have played music, but he goes for concerts. I've never been to Esplanade since secondary school, and I only went there last year and a few weeks ago because for research for this. But everyone else has been touched by music a lot more effectively than I have. And my journey during this 1 year plus was to appreciate music enough so that appreciation journey, I can use that as context to then shorten it into this documentary so that other people, when they watch it, they understand what's going on. And not only just understand it, once they enjoy that feeling of music that we have presented in the film, what's that next step? maybe talking to a friend about music, maybe going down to see a busker. Now that it's a very timely film now that live performances are coming up again. Participate. Either participate by picking up the easiest instrument that you could find, or opening up your doors to other musicians to fill your space up with music as well.
So that's the bigger social good you are trying to present through this work?
It is one of those things that came naturally. I don't actively seek out for or what good can a film do. My immediate intrigue was that I was presented with a very challenging prospects with satisfactory outcomes if I do it right. Because when I told the other musicians, I met a few communities since, and then I told them, and then obviously I'm a new face. Then they'll ask me, what am I doing here? It's like, oh, I'm trying to make a film about the feeling of music playing. And none of them called me out. They were intrigued by it. They never felt like it was a fool's errand. And I even asked it to the musicians who are coming on board, because they are going to have their face, their skill set in the film as well. They have a lot to lose if this thing doesn't I don't do justice to their skills as well. And then when I told them, like, is this a fool's errand? Because I don't see any other works that have done this before. And they said, no, I think it's doable. So then it feels like then there's something here. It's challenging, but then there's something here. And I guess because it is challenging but it's worth doing, naturally then there are good that will come out of it. So all these other extra things of the actions that people could be inspired to take, I think I've always enjoyed having that organically surface rather than to treat that, okay, what does this film do first? And then after that, find a story that fits it. I always go from the story and the challenges first. This other social good and all that, I think it comes naturally, and it always does. So long as you handle the story well, this social good and all the other reactions that come out of it, it always does. And there's no point for filmmakers, at least from my perspective, to be fixated on that, because you can't really control how people are going to react to your film. No one might care. And so what are you going to do? You feel like the fear of no one caring is going to change the way that you make the story so much so that you... And we've seen some things before whereby people have to care about the environment. So I don't care if I over-dramatize the thing, right? And the ends justify the means. But then that is a very dangerous line to toe. Yeah.
Is there a reason why it seems like the instruments are more oriental? It's 笛子, pipa, why not electric guitar and violin or cello?
So this one only stems from how the story came about. I did say that the location is the Engtian Chinese Culture Shop.
Yep.
It is one of the origin nodes for Chinese instruments in Singapore. And I was there because I was there trying to explore and educate myself for another documentary relating to Chinese instruments, which I put on a shelf for now. Maybe I'll explore that later, but it led to this one. And when I met Jeffrey, the owner, he introduced me to Faisal, who is the guzheng player. So this is where like that documentary thing came about. I didn't choose the guzheng and all those. It came like that.
Just the stars align in that way.
Yeah. And I'm also not that fixated on the type of instruments, because then we can go down the rabbit hole as well.
Yep.
Why an electric guitar rather than a classical guitar? It's like you all should put a piano inside there, or like, it is not about the music. It is not about the instruments that's being played, but the relationship between the musicians. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use the film to get to a more fundamental level, whereby it doesn't matter what instruments we had chosen. In fact, the other musicians that we've casted for the jamming, it was more important in terms of what their personalities are, because they have never met each other prior to that. In fact, the pipa player, we got on board the night before we shot. We only had 3 musicians, because we had a musician who is a cellist that should have been part of the group, but because he was in the States when we were finally planning to shoot it, then it's like, it's a missed opportunity. And then all of a sudden, just out of like conversations here and there, there was a pipa player who was interested in coming on. And this was like the next day we are shooting already. And then it's like, yeah. The good thing is that I think there's a culture within my team whereby this is a documentary. So let's take it up. And obviously it was difficult to ensure that we have the proper microphones and all that at such a late hour, but we were able to make it work. And now I think we are currently in the post-production stages. If we didn't have that PIPA player, this documentary wouldn't have been the same. And so that's also why I see this as a documentary than a narrative.
When will this be ready?
So this, I plan to have it be ready sometime in July.
Okay.
Obviously, I would want to send this for the Singapore International Film Festival. I know that so long as we do the work that we're about to do for the next few weeks, that it has the polish and the quality that is worthy for consideration. So I plan to go through the film festival route also because of my own development. There are a few film festivals that I want to go to because like the Hot Docs International Documentary Film Festival in Toronto. I went there in 2018 just as a free audience like festival member, and I learned so much from it. It is an ambition of mine to go back there, but as a filmmaker rather than just as an audience, and to basically see the world and learn more through documentaries. While that is happening, I also want to host as many private screenings as possible. Reason being, one, I have that 2 paths that I told you about, and that works. The film festival stuff is like fun, and hopefully we get some accolades, but you can't really control that. So you let that be. That's more for like the fun that we have rightfully earned. The private screening is where it's at, where I want to be able to meet people who may value this work and may open new paths for us. But also as a documentary storyteller, I want to also put myself in that room to potentially be grilled or potentially to be better, because I want to, in private screenings, show them on a tablet, on the biggest tablet I could find, and then I want to show you the film, and then you tell me whether it's good or not, and then let's have that discussion. Tell me whether it sucks. Tell me what you like about it.
So very brutal, very first-hand kind of feedback channel.
And it's not about, it's like, oh, okay, you don't like then next time I'll change. Because everyone has their own opinions, right? It's more like I want to see whether this documentary has done justice to musicians. Because this one is a little bit different. This isn't really about the 4 musicians and Jeffrey, the 5 people who are inside there. Because it is about the feeling of music playing. So it is trying to represent a craft, not a particular subject matter. And so because of that, I feel like for me to say that, oh, I've done justice to this, I want to put myself on the stand.
Okay.
So all the other communities that I've been on who have been educating me is like, oh, you want to do this? Let me show you how you can play these notes or this kind of thing. I've done that for the past couple of months. So I'm going to show them the film. Tell me what you think. Does this do justice to the feeling that you know so well? And then if you say yes, then even if I have no other accolades and whatever, I know that at the minimum I've succeeded to that point.
Oh, it's super scary. This topic, this thing that you chose to document, that you chose to do essentially a film on. It's so difficult because, just now you spoke about the talent and the innate talent part, right? I always try to play the guitar. And when I was in JC, I was in Catholic Junior College for the first 3 months. I was in a guitar club. There were some people who you give them this chord progression, right? And you give them the scale, right? And they can just jam something out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like just these 7 notes, they know this, the chord progression is this, the scale is this, and they can just jam. I can never do it. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but it's something that I always say, there's this a lot of people I think have seen this cartoon before about this row of animals. Then the teacher is like saying who can climb that tree the fastest. Then you have a goldfish, you have a monkey, you have like an elephant. There are some things that we are innately good at. Some people have the ears, they're born with the ears. So they have like perfect pitch. They can immediately hear what the note is. Of course, not many people have that. It comes with some musical training as well. But if you don't have it, right, then it's very difficult to train.
So like on that note, like we're kind of like going back full circle because we talked a little bit about innate talent at the start. I think one of the things we always have to be aware about is, after acknowledging it, how do we like fiddle with what I consider this to be a fact of life within our own pursuit of happiness or success. Some people would basically see that and then say that, yeah, I don't have perfect pitch, right? So you can't blame me for not being good at what I'm doing because I'm not born with the advantages. But here's the thing, right? Those innate talents are not prerequisites for success. The way that I've structured it is so that if you want to make a career of it, if you want to be the best in the world at it, then it is highly likely that having innate talent and then working hard on it is going to make you more successful than someone that simply works hard on it.
Yep.
But not having any innate talent wouldn't stop anyone
from trying and pursuing.
Yes. It is just that to what degree.
Yep.
So maybe it's like it takes you 10 years what someone would only take 5 or even 1.
Yeah.
But you enjoy it. You don't have to play at the national stadium. You don't have to win a Grammy, but you get a kick out of it, even though maybe you're at like grade 1 or something. And that's good enough. So for that, the innate talent thing doesn't matter. And I usually like to bring this up because sometimes some people not only just use the innate talent as a convenient excuse. I've seen this happen from time to time whereby they use the innate talent to bring other people down as well. Right? I'm working hard. Why am I not as good as you? Because you're talented lah. If I was as talented as you, I confirm win one. Yeah, it's because you're lucky. And then so that's why. So there was this thing. I think a few shows have done this before, whereby there are people who are smart that dislike being called geniuses, because calling someone smart, or they have put their hard work, they know how to write, but then after it, it's like, 这个有天分啊. So it's like, wait, I don't need to put in the hard work. I also need to study for the math test. Just because I scored 100 and you scored 70 doesn't mean I didn't work as hard as you. And so I think the way we interpret the innate talent debate within ourselves matters a lot, because it really, I think, affects the way we value ourselves and the way we also project our potential insecurities on other people.
It's true. I'm going to ask you one last key question, which I see we have prepared in topic 5. I thought it would be a good wrap up.
Sure.
In topic 5, I talk about, your on progression. From having to work on your writing, which is interesting as well, having to work on your writing to being able to contribute a commentary piece on CNA. In this journey, right, from point A to point B, for yourself, do you think that sheer hard work or smart work is more important?
I'm going to send you the link later, but I like the belief that Mike Rowe, which for some of the older folks, when I say older folks, is like maybe those turning 30 like you and me like that.
Yep.
On Discovery Channel, there used to be a show called Dirty Jobs. And Dirty Jobs was hosted by this guy called Mike Rowe.
I think I watched before Dirty Jobs.
Yeah, a very popular show. And I like the way that he was an orator. He knows how to communicate very well. And our time was, in secondary school, was all this thing, work smart, not hard. And the thing that always struck me, and then Mike Rowe put it into words very well, is like, why not both? Why not work smart and hard? It's like, does it take more effort to... So that was one of the things where I didn't quite understand when it became a thing. It's like, I understand it being a cautionary tale where you don't want to just spend all your effort digging a hole when you haven't done your research and you do not know whether there's a goal where X marks the spot. But just simply trying to work hard and not smart doesn't tell the full story, I think. I think it almost feels a little bit scammy. You don't have to work hard. Just work smart. Don't have to break a sweat. And at least the life stories that I've seen and heard over my documentary life, I've never seen that play out, where someone has earned the wisdom to work smart by not working hard.
Exclusively, you just work smart, right? That's not good to cut it out as well, right?
Because how do you plan to get smarter at it? You have to put in the work. Maybe it's in the saying itself. Maybe that's why there's still work in the front before like smart. Yeah. So it's like the work smart and work hard has to be part of that. But the way that you phrased the question reminded me about the conversation that I just had at the end of that production, because we also have some young people on set as well. I'm 29 years old. There are some people there who are maybe below 25, 23 and all that. And then there was just a conversation about what does it take to take this leap of faith. Because I was very open with the entire crew on what this means for me and potentially for the future of like my company.
Yeah.
And then I also had a talk with my director of photography, Jeremy, who has been with me ever since the first documentary. And we both came to that conclusion whereby we couldn't have done this particular project in any other time other than now. We weren't ready 1 year ago. We certainly would have fell flat on our face if we had tried this 2 years ago. This was challenging, but it was good that it was now. And when I went back home and thought about that conversation, that felt consistent with every single other major project that I've done. From the first documentary, where I didn't even expected myself to make a documentary, then all of a sudden we took 11 months to plan an expedition to go to Indonesia for 12 days and make a documentary about it. And then even though it went to film festivals, it didn't really work. Like if you see it, it's really not that high quality. So the Innate talent debate came about. And the only way for me to answer that, to me honestly, was to make another documentary. But this time, take out all the variables and do that. Every single one of these major undertakings that I've done, it's always felt the most challenging at that point in time, but it also felt so right as well. This new, in fact, these two new documentaries, the feeling of music playing and my learning Mandarin TikTok documentary series, it feels right to do this now compared to all the years prior. And perhaps the reason for that is because they were motivated and informed by all my past experiences. So we could only pull the trigger because of the hard-won wisdom that we have earned in the past. Yeah.
What about luck and hard work?
Luck has to be acknowledged. I prefer to use the word serendipity because so this was one of the factors of life that I was very intrigued in. And so when I was in Tembusu College, in between of the Conservation Conversation, which is my first documentary, and Trespass Stories from Singapore's Teas Market, my second documentary, I needed some time to improve some necessary skill set within my camera work and all that, because for this second documentary, I'm going to be a solo operator. And so I emailed a few of my professors, can I interview you? I'm practicing to do my next documentary. And obviously you have stories. Let me try to do justice to your stories. And then the good thing is that in Tembusu College, there is no lack of story individuals. I was even more motivated to interview them because of the fact that Tembusu was a very young college. When I came in, it was only about like, maybe I think like year 5, year 6-ish. So all the professors that went there were first batch, first generation, which meant that they couldn't have thought about a career progression that led up to Tembusu College, because Tembusu College and U-Town didn't exist then. And the documentary series, which never got published apart from one episode, was simply what led to that moment. And what was consistent in all the interviews I've done is that when you get to embrace the serendipities of life, you are able to make the most positive use out of it. It is often referred to as luck. And then if it goes sideways, then it's bad luck. But it is basically the unknowns that you can't control that has such a huge impact on your career. But its residual effects on your life is pretty much on how you respond to it. There's also that other thing about luck whereby you need to be ready to be lucky. And that's something that I also believe in and work hard on as well. Because you don't know when the next big call is going to come. And if you're not ready to take that leap when that call comes, then you can see it as bad luck because it's like, the timing isn't right. But if you have worked hard on it and then that call comes, and then I see it as good luck, wow, just nice as I'm ready, just like the Channel News Asia thing, right? I did a first paid role just before that, and that was very influential in terms of how I managed to hold myself accountable to the team that I'm working with for the first time. But that's because I worked hard to be ready to be lucky. And so it is a lot about, I think, adaptation and preparation. And I don't believe that people are unlucky all of the time. So if you keep on developing yourself and trying to plug your weaknesses as well as like strengthen the things that make you the best that you can be at the work that you do, then when all these unknowns come in, then at least you have more moves to make. Then you get to determine whether you've interpreted it as good luck or bad luck.
Then you can write your story.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs made a very famous commencement speech, right, about connecting the dots backward in hindsight. So do you think you are a living example, your journey of how you just give your best every day and afterwards you connect the dots backward and somehow everything just seems to align?
Yeah. For that connecting the dots one, it's just that everything just sounds better retrospectively. Yeah, that's actually basically about it. It feels like it makes a lot of sense every time if I talk about what happened 5 years ago and what happened.
Seems
like
like everything like, A led to B, B led to C, C led to D.
Yes, but that is also because I think when we see it backwards, connecting the dot backwards, there's a lot of housekeeping. The audience doesn't get to see the infinite number of possibilities. That seems like a fracture on glass rather than a straightforward like network connecting path like that. So I think that's the illusion that I think is always worth shedding a light on. Because it isn't like that. It's not like it's predestined. So how I think maybe the next logical thought would be then how does one find comfort in that? Or how did people like myself get to walk to this point and keep on walking, even though it doesn't feel as certain as per how we tell it. And my own personal belief is that I'm fortunate enough to find my why very early on. I knew from Sec 3 that my main purpose in life is to recreate the success that my parents had for my family. Plain and simple. But the interesting caveat is that I can't just do this by earning money. There are easier ways to earn money. But I need both money and time. I've added a third option whereby I also hope to have a storied life so that I can then share with my wife, with my children, and for everyone that I meet. So make myself basically a better human being. And so the story, because I think I learned a lot from my parents who had storied lives, and I get to learn from their stories as well. So now I have these three options. Everything else since Sec 3 had just been me chipping away at how do I get to that objective. And if that means taking an unconventional route, sure. Because whether something was conventional or unconventional doesn't matter in my equation. My target is set already. And then after that, how I get there is based on other life philosophies. I want to find something that I'm innately good at. Then it's like, oh, let's try documentary. Oh, there's something here. Let's try some more. Then after that, it's like, oh, I think I believe that I'm good in documentaries. Let's develop it further. Then it's like, oh, I made my first big paycheck with that. Can I go further? Or I made my first documentary series with that and got to like national television. Can I go like further? And then basically keep testing that hypothesis all the way to that end objective. So that means that in my future possibilities, there is probably one where I have to forego doing documentary storytelling because I've misinterpreted the entire thing. Maybe I'm just a talkative person that knows how to operate a camera and I can use it in a different way. I don't know. I'll let you know in the next 10 years.
Great. Do you have anything else to add?
Not really. What do people usually say at this point?
I don't know. Some people say nothing. Some people just talk about something that they want to talk about. I suppose they wanted to, before the interview, they had, where can we watch this, or where can people who have watched this interview, where can they see your past works?
Okay. So for me, the reason why I call myself OKJ is that, SEO is very simple. So if you search for OKJ or OKJ Works, you'll find me on all the platforms. To be honest, the platform that I'm most active on is actually Telegram. So I want to be on Telegram because I don't want to be at the influence of the algorithms. So I can talk to my community in a more direct way. And then they are usually the first that get to hear about my new projects or even sometimes dilemmas that I have. And then sometimes we have discussions.
This is interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, so we have that kind
Don't
of
be
thing.
at the mercy of the algorithm.
Yeah. So we have that. For the Chinese documentary, you can watch it. The best is on TikTok, but you can also watch it on LinkedIn and Facebook. But it's not as good of a viewing experience. So TikTok is where it's at. And then for some of my like future works, that one, if you're interested in the feeling of music playing, like a private screening, you're interested to find out what that's all about, just drop me a message in like my email or anywhere that you could find, and then we can like set it up at the second half of the year. But effectively, that's it. I have my 1-2 punch for basically the next 18 months. And then after that, we'll see where this road leads to and what paths it opens.
Okay, I will link your email in the comment section, in the description.
Sure.
Okay. I wish you all the best for this very interesting and also very ambitious project that you are doing. Please let me know when it's out. I would love to catch it as well.
Yeah. No, we can schedule a private screening with you.
Yeah, in fact, I have a TV there. We can do a private screening.
So
I don't know. We can do many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you all the best. And I also, if you ask me, right, I think that you're a very woke person. Just having that, because I have spoken with many people, right, over my insurance career and all as well. Having this level of awareness, and even at different life stages, is not something that I feel anyone can take for granted. Some people just go about life and just get blinded by some things, which is, there's nothing wrong or right or wrong about that. Eventually, you might realize that maybe this is not what I want, but the level of awareness is something that I feel very keenly from you. I wish you all the best, and I wish you all this upcoming documentary film, all the best. And I wish you all the best in your career as well. Thank you for making time for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And like you said, I think we will have another one down the road, and we can check in on your next milestone.
Yeah, no, I would love to. Yeah, we'll pen it down.
Okay, thank you, OKJ. Thank you.
Thank you.